So in this video, we're going to talk about Gareth Jandrell's play, Thebes. So this is a cool play. It takes a number of full-length plays from the ancient Greek canon, particularly the 3 plays of the Oedipus cycle by Sophocles. So that's Oedipus the King, Oedipus at Colonus, and Antigone, and Aeschylus's 7 Against Thebes, and it jams them into one single full-length play that tells basically the entire story of the Theban cycle from the time under Oedipus's reign of the plague up through the death of Antigone, Haemon, and Creon's despair at the end of Sophocles' Antigone. So it blends all of these things into one play, but it does a really, really good job giving us a coherent story arc. So we have played out the events of Oedipus the King. Very, very briefly, the events of Oedipus at Colonus, particularly Polynices coming to find Oedipus to get his blessing to attack Thebes, a blessing which is not forthcoming. Then we have the 7 Against Thebes battle, in which Polynices with his 7 champions challenge Eteocles with his 7 champions, 6 other champions, since each of the brothers is one of the champions. But the fight between those two for control of the crown. Then we get the events of Antigone, where Creon prohibits Polynices' burial, Antigone buries him, and then basically forces Creon's hand to have her killed. So the play covers all of that stuff. Like, if you were a teacher of Greek tragedy, a teacher of drama, or whatever it is, and you wanted to have students know the whole Theban cycle, this is a reasonably good way of doing it, because it covers all of the events. That being said, there are some major, major differences from what we get in Aeschylus and Sophocles. One of which is the way that the chorus works. Because what Jandrell does with the chorus is really quite interesting. The chorus is still a collective character, but the nature of that collectiveness is different than it is in Greek tragedy, because you don't have the chorus speaking as one. They don't speak in unison. Instead, you have a diverse array of voices which together form the voice of the community. Now, there are bits that are more performative. So, for instance, we have this thing repeated 3 or 4 times where, according to the stage directions, this is the first time it happens, which is almost the very beginning of the play. It says, "Lights flicker on. The chorus have formed into the shape of Tydeus, one of the attackers of Thebes. Darkness." The chorus has a line. "Lights flicker on. The chorus have formed Capaneus." Darkness. So the chorus repeatedly forms the shapes of these attackers of Thebes. So there is that coordinated element of it. And in the opening bit, this sort of almost preface, it says, "The chorus in this piece represents a malleable entity. It moves, it breathes, it comes together to make images, characters. It molds back into a mass of people. It is the set, it is the people, and most of all it is the sound. They paint the landscapes with themselves." And then the stage directions here explain that there are different sounds the chorus makes that represent machine gun fire, tear gas, dogs, sirens, etc., etc. It says, "However, these should be punctuated from single voices from the chorus. When speaking words individually, they are clear and audible. This is their voice. They deserve to be heard. They do not speak en masse. They are many, but they each have a voice, and they each get the chance to speak. They are Thebes, both the city and its inhabitants. This is their story." So that's a very different approach than we get in the chorus of Sophocles or Aeschylus, where the chorus represents one perspective, even if that's often a complex perspective. Here we have a variety of voices, a variety of perspectives that collaboratively create the choral part. Now, the other thing that we get in here that's different than we get in Sophocles or Aeschylus is a continual promise of and discussion of democracy. There's at least one chorus member, possibly two. It's hard to tell because it depends on how you would cast it, because the choral lines are broken up by lines, but they aren't attributed specifically. So you don't necessarily know if you're getting the same voice over and over or what. Some of them have very distinct personalities. Like there's a musician who keeps trying to get people to pay him to sing or to pay her to sing, whichever way it's cast. But there's at least one character who's continually talking about revolution and the power of the people to rule Thebes. And people disagree, people agree. It sort of comes and goes depending on what's happening in the plot. We also get people like Oedipus and Creon and other aristocrats, other nobles, other kings, who make reference to democracy, who talk about how the people should get to choose their own leaders when things are stable, etc., etc. Again, totally absent from Sophocles' Oedipus cycle or Aeschylus' Seven Against Thebes. But the last bit that I find really interesting, at the end of the play, the chorus finally asserts that they are going to enact democracy. So it says here, and I'll let you know when we get a different voice. Let no more corpses make home with power. Let no kings be given state here. New voice. Too many times have we cowered beneath the speech of one man, one we never picked, one who had no right to lead, none. Too long have we fallen to one man's folly. New voice. Let counsel be set among many of Thebes, no ruler of men but us all. New voice. A chorus shall light this city's way. New voice. A state not just of the most blessed of men, but of every caste and creed and body we have, each cradling naught but small power. New voice. To nurture and coax into peace. New voice. To grow and cherish and bear love. New voice. Small enough to never grow to tyranny. New voice. We people shall rule this city from this day onward. New voice. We swear. New voice. This girl was a spark to dry tinder. New voice. This girl set our pyre to flame. New voice. This girl showed us strength lies in people. New voice. To all men who stand here's grave death. So there's a couple of interesting things about this. One is that the chorus decides they are going to create a democratic power structure. They have a lot of faith in that democratic power structure and the idea that it can never become tyrannical, which of course we know is not necessarily the case. Autocrats have been elected democratically. So we have that. It raises some question about the faith the chorus seems to have in democracy and whether or not that's something that we as audience members living in representative democracies like the UK or the US, whether or not we should trust that democracy necessarily. It raises important and challenging questions. But the other thing that strikes me is that they assert that Antigone inspired them to democratic action, which I don't really understand because there's nothing actually democratic about Antigone's action. She does what she thinks is best, and that's fine. I get that. But she doesn't do anything democratic. She doesn't take a vote or poll anyone else. She acts on her own volition, and she sticks to her will and her position in pretty much the exact same way that Creon sticks to his. To me, there's very little difference between them, so I'm not sold on the idea that Antigone is somehow a symbol of democracy, even if for many people she's a symbol of resistance to arbitrary authority. That doesn't make her a symbol of democracy. Those are very different propositions. So I think it's one of those things where, like, I'm fine with the chorus saying we want to be democratic. I think that's something that in this case is probably was in the cards anyway, and Antigone had very little to do with it beyond, like, this was a thing they seized upon, even though it had nothing to do with her or her actions. Yeah. I think it's a really interesting play. It does a lot of interesting things, and it gives you the entire cycle in an easy to digest